In this video, we're going to go over the for statement. The for statement is important for when you want to do a certain task or run a certain statement a specific amount of times. So we're going to do a new class in Lesson 5, and we're going to name it Counting. Let's go ahead and put our comment header. That's going to be our name, Lesson 5. Our file is counting.java, and this program is going to count up to a specific number. Under our public static void main string args, we're going to do our first for statement, or for loop. So we're going to say for, and it's going to have an open parentheses and a closed parentheses. Now I'm just going to show you how exactly a for loop is set up. It starts off with for, and then you initialize the loop index or your variable that you're using for the loop. And then it's your test statement. So what is it looking for? How many times is it going to run the loop? So the test is just to determine whether you should keep going within this for loop or not. And then after that, you're going to have the step, so when it would start the next cycle. And then you would open it, have a statement, so what you want it to do, and then you would close the loop. So most of our statements we have ended with the semicolon. This one is going to be ended with a bracket, and we'll close it with another bracket. What we want this program to do is count up to a specific number. And counting, we're going to count by whole numbers, so we're going to initialize an integer. So that integer we're going to call I. That'll be our variable. And we're initializing it, so we're saying that it's starting at 0. So I is assigned to 0 first. That's the initialization. You have your variable type, your variable, and where it's starting. Now it's the test. If we're counting up, we're getting greater. And we want to stop once a number goes above our point until I is less than 4. So that would be 0, 1, 2, and 3. But how do you get from 0 to 4 in a consecutive manner? We are just going to add 1 to I each time. So this plus plus is just an assignment that says that we're adding 1 to this variable. And what would we like it to do? Well, we want the program to count up to this specific number. So let's have it display that. So system.out.println, and we're going to have the program show us the I. Let's go ahead and run this. And there we have it. First, it sets I to 0, and it prints out I as 0. But 0 is still less than 4, so it's going to go up, but it's going to add 1 to that. So now we get that I is 1, so it's going to print out 1. But 1 is still less than 4, so it's going to add 1 to that 1 that we have, which was our new I, and that's going to give us 2. But 2 is still less than 4, so it's going to add 1 to that, and so on until it gets to 3. And 3 is less than 4, so it's going to print that out. But when you add 1 to 3, you get 4, and 4 is not less than 4. 4 is equal to 4. And that's where the loop, the for loop, stops. And it's called a loop because it will do it over and over and over again till you reach a certain point, or until it fails the test, which in this case is when I becomes greater than or equal to 4. So once it fails, it's going to stop running what's in between those for statement brackets and move on to the next line of code. Say we wanted to count up to 10. We would just replace that 4 with a 10. So now it's going to count 0 to 10 because 10 is still less than or equal to 10, but once it adds 1 to 10 again, that's going to be 11, and it's going to stop printing out numbers. And there we have it. What happens if we wanted to count down though? If I++ is really saying I equals I plus 1, when we do -1, we just rewrite that as minus minus. We're going to have it count down from a specific number. So let's do it like a spaceship taking off. Let's start from 10. We're going to keep going for I greater than or equal to 0. So when we run this, it's going to count down from 10. It's going to take 1 away from that, and that's where we get 9. 9 is still greater than or equal to 0. So then it's going to take 1 away from 9 and give us 8. 8 is still greater than or equal to 0, so it's going to take 1 away from 8 now. That would give us 7, and 7 is still greater than or equal to 0, and so on all the way down to 0. But when you take 1 away from 0, you get -1, which is not greater than or equal to 0, so it doesn't print that out. The loop stops. Let's say at the end of 0 that we wanted to say blast off. We would not include that in our for statement. If we did, if we included that in our for statement, right after it would print out a number, it would also print out blast off and then see if that new number was greater than or equal to 10. Because remember, the for loop is contained within this bracket and this bracket. So we need to move this outside of the brackets. So what we're going to do is place it directly after the for loop. So once this is finished, it's going to count down to 0, it's going to print out that 0, and then it's going to stop. And then the program or compiler is going to read what is after the loop, which will be this. And remember, since the compiler is reading down, it's going to read this for loop over and over again till it's finished, and then it's going to read blast off because it's all inside our main strings, and this is outside of our for loop. So when we go ahead and play it now, it's going to count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, blast off. And usually instead of 0, it just says blast off, so get rid of this equal sign. So now do it until I is greater than 0. 0 is not greater than 0, so it would get rid of that. 2, 1, blast off. And this is just a simple introduction to using the for loop.